So welcome everybody. You guys kind of got, a brief agenda there, preview of the agenda, but I just wanted to welcome everybody um, to our last Women Build a Better World webinar. So on behalf of San Gabriel Valley Habitat for Humanity, my name is Brianna Lopez. I'm the volunteer coordinator here, and I'm thrilled to welcome all of you to our Women Build a Better World series. So tonight we'll be interviewing Tunua Thrash-Ntuk. Our webinar series is a part of our Women Build program. So our Women Build movement empowers women and their allies to envision a better future where everyone has a safe place to call home. So every year, the Women Build movement brings women together to raise funds, to recruit their friends and build homes side by side for women in need of affordable housing. This year, we've taken our movement to the next level by adding this webinar series that features courageous women leaders tackling some of the most difficult issues in their community, and as a result, making our world a better place. We will be taking questions from the audience tonight, so be sure to send them to Steve Gomez, our Marketing and Communication Manager, through the chat box. And to get started, I'd like to introduce our guest interviewer, Heather Woodbury. So Heather Woodbury is a writer, performer, and activist communicator known for her unique novel-style series play, which have been critically distinguished in the New York Times, the Chicago Sun-Times, on NPR, and it has also received multiple STAG productions in the US and Europe. In addition, her works are published as novels and broadcasts on radio and podcasts. In April of this year, 91 performing artists launched a live on Zoom interpretation of Heather's 12-part serial drama, As the Globe Warms, and raised donations and awareness for a dozen pandemic relief funds. Described by Oscar-nominated filmmaker Deborah Granite, who made the movie Winter's Bone, as an American tapestry, the interesting lives in Globe's story mirror our current divisions, and the one-of-a-kind early lockdown performance and robust post-show discussion. It generated it continues to make a space for open dialogue about this critical turning point in our lives. So you can actually tune in by visiting As the Globe Warms panelpalooza.com, or write for a free pass at Heather's globepanel@gmail.com. And again, we will have those links at the end of the program, so you'll be able to see where you can contact Heather. So without further ado, take it away, Heather.
Thank you very much, Brianna. It's my pleasure now to introduce Tunua Thrash-Ntuk, and a little bit about Tunua. She is a native Angelino. She's the executive director of Los Angeles Local Initiatives Support Corporation, which is LALISC. And she is a seasoned community and economic development practitioner with more than 15 years under her belt in both the nonprofit and the private sector. And her strengths range from community advocacy to asset and real estate development that is centered around neighborhood revitalization. She's also led a number of important urban initiatives in Los Angeles, focused on affordable housing and commercial development, as well as transit-oriented projects. And prior to joining LISC, Tunua served as the executive director of the West Angeles Community Development Corporation. And during her tenure there, she was responsible for the oversight of a very large real estate portfolio, and she brokered a very breakthrough development, the construction and opening of the West Angeles Plaza, which was a 24,000 square foot commercial office project. Tunua now serves as a board member or advisory board member to many entities. I'll just name a few. The Federal Home Loan Bank San Francisco's Affordable Housing Council, Housing California, the City of LA Measure HHH Citizens Oversight Commission, and the Greenlining Institute and the Los Angeles Development Fund. Tunua is a graduate of MIT, and she earned her master's in city planning there. As well, she is an alumna of good old UC Berkeley, where she got a Bachelor of Arts degree in interdisciplinary studies. So welcome, Tunua. It's an honor to be able to talk to you tonight.
Hi, Heather. Thanks for that introduction and sort of reminder of my bio. Thanks for sharing that with everybody. And I wasn't sure if you had a connection to UC Berkeley, so go Bears.
I grew up in Berkeley myself.
Oh, okay. See, I could tell as you were introducing me, I said, there's something about Berkeley. There's a connection there for her.
That's right. Well, a lot of people with good values have something to do with UC Berkeley, I find. So, or the town. So I would love for you to just start us off with telling us a little bit about your professional journey and what do you feel like prepared you to be the executive director of a nonprofit like this?
Yeah, so, I actually became an executive director pretty early in my career. So, being the executive director of LISC was not the first chance that I had to be an executive director. And, I think part of what, if we're going to start there in terms of sort of my background, and maybe as folks have questions, we can talk a little bit further back. But part of what I think it is some combination of, you've got folks who are just, I'm a leader. I always have been. When you look back at my background, I gravitate towards public service. I gravitate towards being a leader. I started thinking about a childhood experience. We were very, very poor. So we didn't travel. We didn't take vacations really. And one of the things that I used to do as a kid is my cousins and I would sit around the table during the summer and we'd create what we called itineraries. I couldn't even spell the word itinerary. And we'd say, okay, we're going on vacation and this is where we're going to go. And we'd pick a place and we'd write down the things we were going to do because we were travel agents. And then we'd sell each other tickets. And I was always sort of the one who was in charge of what we were going to do. And so that was an example of sort of, how as a young kid, even in circumstances where you're trying to figure out, what you can do to have a little fun, I was in charge of sort of where were we going to go and how much it was going to cost and what we were going to do when we got there. So I think being an executive director is building upon those sort of natural leadership skills. But the other component that I think people underestimate is being told that you could be an executive director and someone investing in you as that other element to make that happen. And so for me, when I was at the West Angeles Community Development Corporation, for example, working as a director, first working as a project manager, the executive director there said to me, I think that you are someone we should be grooming for the executive directorship. So, I see you as someone in that way. And it just so happens that there was a national fellowship where the organization won that fellowship, and it allowed for the current sitting executive director to identify an emerging leader and take on a year and a half worth of succession planning so that the organization understood that what it might take to succession plan. And me as a leader, there was an investment in me in terms of my leadership skills and being prepared to take on an executive director role. So, some of us are born with these ideas on like what to do and, how to get things done. But for most of us, I think it'll be a matter of having a mentor, a supporter, identify you, tap you, and then invest in you and say you can work on and get the skills that are necessary to be successful as an executive director.
I love both parts of that story because I love that from reading your bio and your articles, you're all about sort of transforming place and sort of letting not making a place a beautiful place to be rather than someplace where people are stuck, right? And so even from an early childhood, you were sort of, you were involved in that, like you were imaginatively already kind of coming from a place and transforming a place. You weren't letting yourself, you were letting yourself be mobile with your, with what you guys were playing, you know. I love that. And that, but then the fact that the note that also, yeah, there has to be an outside wind, even if the ship's pointed in the right direction, there has to be some wind in the sails that's going to pull you, because, you know, we're not just we're not just born full grown and perfect
right.
and able to make our own way. We need others to also mentor us and nurture us. And that seems to be what your whole game plan is for communities.
And
so
just before you
yeah.
ask the next question,
Yeah.
just kind of building on that, when
Yeah.
we think about the fact that this is a conversation about women and, you know, women building and building better, you know, the other element to this is that as women, sometimes we're not necessarily willing to just step out there and say, you know, I'm a leader and I'm going for this. And sometimes we have to be asked, sometimes we have to be sort of coached into those kinds of roles. And, you know, for me, because of sort of the natural kind of leadership qualities that I've always had, I have suffered from it at different points in my career, but I happened to have a female mentor, Dr. Lula Balton, at that moment, who was able to, you know, provide that external mentorship and support and leadership. So, you know, as women, I want to definitely continue to underscore as part of this conversation is that we have a role in leadership as well. And so knowing and understanding that also helped me understand that I could be an executive director.
And seeing it modeled in a woman, I think, is important because, you know, we're not completely defined by our biology, but we all have, you know, women have a certain sphere of leadership style, which is sometimes different from the culture of male leadership style. And it's great to sort of build this culture of women's leadership, which has always been there, but now it's more and more public, I think. So yeah, so this kind of leads quite directly out of what we were talking about with LISC. What has surprised you that you learned about, or, you know, sort of came to reckon with since becoming its executive director? And has there been sort of any kind of new insight or new muscle that you find you're developing in that role with LISC?
Yeah, so what did I find surprising? So LISC is a community development financial institution. And as the short nomenclature is CDFI. And as a CDFI, we spend a lot of our time focused on bringing capital to communities. So either to a real estate project, to an affordable housing project, to an economic development project that generates jobs, or directly to small businesses. And I think that I was very interested in how to move capital into the neighborhoods that I know needed it, right? The neighborhood I grew up in, the neighborhoods I was working in at West Angeles. I'm like, these neighborhoods need access to capital in order to be able to create the kind of places that, you know, people deserve to live in. And I think that I thought that capital was sort of linear, that it would, you know, only come in one way, that it could kind of be used in a discrete set of ways. And as I have come to, you know, be with the organization now for more than 5 years, as I've really, you know, tested out and stressed what it means to bring capital to communities, it actually has taken on all kinds of different forms. So, you know, it is there, and because it is a community development financial institution, we're not quite a bank. It's not a one size fit all. So it's not for us a, you know, distinct credit box that says, if you've got this credit score, you have this much in collateral, you have this level of experience, you can access this amount of capital at this rate. There are some other elements when it comes to investing from a community development perspective. And I've been really, really pleased that I've been able to really stretch what that box looks like. And who fits into there, and how we then move capital to places that really need it, but not based on sort of traditional models. Doesn't mean we aren't successful. Doesn't mean we, we get our money back and, do all that great work too. But it also means that we are looking at what the benefits are, and we are finding value in things that maybe the traditional private sector doesn't necessarily find to be as valuable. In terms of making a decision about who gets access to the money that we are able to bring.
Well, you're making me think of organic farming as distinct from, say, like monoculture, single crop and a certain panoply of pesticides and growing methods. Like you're talking about, it seems to me, I love the idea of it not just being linear or coming from one funnel and or addressing, one need, but multiple kind of a sphere of needs. And so it sounds to me like, organic farming can sometimes weather a storm better than conventional farming, right? Because you've got lots of different things growing alongside of one another and kind of protecting from the locusts or whatever is going to come along. So I really love that model, and I think it can be a financially successful and fruitful model.
So far it has been for us, which is great, because when I started at LISC Los Angeles, we have about 35 urban offices across the country. I clearly oversee the LA office. And we were probably in the bottom third in terms of volume of lending, and probably were on the concern list in terms of what our portfolio looked like. We hadn't had an executive director for a few years. And now, we're at the top. We're number 2 in the country right now in terms of volume. And a lot of it is some of the more sort of conventional lending that we do. But part of the way you get to a point where you have that additional edge, where you're able to do a little bit more in terms of capital deployment, is that you've got to get creative about how it gets deployed. So similar to maybe what you're describing in terms of organic farming, not everything is sort of the same one size fits all for our products. And it's allowed me to find some really interesting projects. So a food incubator, for example, that helps to incubate smaller entities that are looking to do B2B work. So this food incubator is able to help people get FDA certifications just by being in their space. But when they first came to us, they have non-credit tenants, whereas in a traditional credit box, they'd say, well, we don't know any of these companies that you want to, base your monthly mortgage on. We're not sure. But we said, we understand that these are entrepreneurs who are creating jobs, who are building wealth in community. And so that made the difference in terms of our ability to invest in that versus others. And so I've just, it's been fascinating for me to see the different ways that we can structure transactions to make them work for a community. They're economically viable, but beyond that, they create, social viability, and long-term stability for these neighborhoods that are really not based in sort of a traditional model. They just wouldn't be able to survive that until they get to a certain place.
No, that really is fascinating, and it's great that you're able to actually move the needle that way. I admire people like you who can figure that out. Lately, a lot of people have been using the term resiliency and resilience in a positive way to describe people who are successfully navigating and thriving through challenges. Obviously, challenges are extraordinarily prevalent right now. And so would you have a story of resiliency that a particular person or place, or your own story, that you'd like to tell us about, share with us? I think we could all use one.
Yeah. one of the things that came to mind, I was here. I was sitting in my office, downtown Los Angeles, and I am working away. And the date is probably somewhere early March, maybe March 9th, March 11th, somewhere around in there. And I am just working away. Now, the news, it's been very clear that COVID-19 is here, it's coming, it's changing things. And yet I'm sitting in my office working away, just as calm as I'm talking to you right now. I'm calling colleagues across the country. And I happen upon a colleague who says to me, Tunua, how are you able to like just talk about the work and what's going to happen in 2 weeks, given this COVID thing? Like this is big. It's getting bigger. I'm very nervous. Like, how have you been able to stay calm and like keep working and keep managing through? And, it was somebody that I know, fairly well, that I've been working with. And I said to the person, I said, I said, you are talking to, or what I'm feeling is that I'm being reminded that as a little girl who grew up in South Central Los Angeles, who somehow did her homework when the sun was going down and the electricity was out in the house. Things were going on outside her home. There was intense gang violence. At times, there were shells of bullets in different places around her home. And yet that same little girl was able to manage through a level of poverty, a level of food insecurity, a level of housing insecurity, and still went to school every day. Not only did she go to school every day, she was in the honors programs. She got great grades, was an A student. And not only did that for herself, but was also the kind of student who looked for the opportunity to be in leadership. And she was student body president. So this idea that there's COVID-19 and that it's happening and that it's scary and that it's big and that it's something that has jarred all of our lives and changed things in ways that we are still trying to figure out what those changes are and what it has meant for us. The level of resiliency that someone at that young age in those circumstances would have had to stretch and learn and gain have been skills of resiliency that I have held with me. Mm-hmm. So yes, I could sit in my office and I could continue to work. And even during this COVID crisis, I have been very visible, very out there and engaging and making sure that being a leader and sharing what information I can. It is all because I've had the chance to grow a level of resiliency based on life circumstances that probably would have broke many, but have been able to give me sort of the wisdom and the strength to carry on even in uncertain circumstances. So that's a bit of my story of resiliency.
Sort of the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah, you got the early version of that, and you've been carrying on ever since. So yeah, I think this very much relates to a couple of articles or pieces that you've written recently. The first I'd like to talk about is in August, you wrote an op-ed piece for Next City called From the Watts Rebellion to George Floyd, South Los Angeles Charts a New Path Toward Racial Justice. And what role or roles do you see community organizations, including LISC, playing as this new path emerges? And I like that in the article, you really sort of emphasize that it has to be in some ways a new path, a unique path, not just the road already traveled.
Yeah, when I was, writing that article and informing that article, part of what I was thinking about is the fact that when the Watts Rebellion took place, my mother was a young woman in that same neighborhood in South Los Angeles. And she was carrying with her sort of the rage and the the hope and dream of being able to live in a place where she could feel like she was valued, could have an equal opportunity to be able to pursue her dreams of education and employment and support for her family. And by the time the 92 unrest rolled around, she was in that very same neighborhood. And now here she was sitting with her daughter in that same neighborhood, having the same kinds of questions and wondering, if her daughter would be able to live out a set of dreams of educational attainment and to be able to have an equal opportunity in society. And the path forward, I think, after the Watts riots was a real focus on, to some extent, police reform, which was, part of the issue, but not the whole issue. After the 92 riots, there was sort of a rehashing of that. And today, I believe that part of the path forward is not just those elements. We really have to focus on the economic conditions that lead people to feel like they are not part of a system, that the things that they see and the things that they are looking to tear down, burn up, and in some way, sort of push their anger towards are things that are not for them, things that are not part of their world, and could possibly never be, is the feeling that some people have. And so, now it is not just it's a call for healing, but it really is gotta be a call for a change in the way that people participate in, our systems and in our structures. I don't want to be in a place where, 15, 20 years from now, I'm sitting and watching things and wondering if my daughter will have a fair chance, if she'll be able to live out her educational dreams and pursuits. We've had 2 cracks at it, and it's time to move in a different direction in terms of how we might move forward.
Yeah, and I think your piece for the Brookings Institute, which was called No More Status Quo, a community-led action plan for addressing structural inequity during the COVID-19 recovery, that gets into the real sort of brass tacks, to sort of a 5-step plan for community-led economic recovery in places that are confronting structural inequities, such as South Los Angeles. So I'd love you to talk us through the steps that LISC utilizes already and how these steps are projected to make, or perhaps are already making, headway towards economic recovery in South LA. But I also just want to add, sort of the holistic recovery that the article references.
Yeah, part of the sort of the give and take that that I wanted to also convey with the article is that the change does have to occur with the people who are in the community. And what I'm super excited about, even more than after the Watts Rebellion, more than after the 92 unrest, is that we have a series of fantastic, well-run, well-led organizations in South Central, in communities that are ready and can take on the work of doing the improvement work from the inside. So at no other point would you have a daughter of the community like me, having been educated at Berkeley, educated at MIT, having had the chance to travel the world, study various different movements and ways, and understand the financial system in the way that I do, and be part of, and having been part of West Angeles and other organizations in the community, and now with LISC, there's a whole list of colleagues and peers that I have who have that same kind of experience and pedigree and passion for doing the work in community. So so we've got the organization. So that's one element I wanted to make sure was people understood. The other piece of this is that those organizations and those people cannot do it alone. This is no longer about the people who are in those communities have got to figure out how to solve these issues themselves. There is much work for everybody else to do in supporting the community as it does the work of building within itself. So it's a matter of sending those resources, supporting those organizations, and supporting the structures that allow for a level of success within those communities. So, you know, we've got to send the jobs, we've got to send the capital, we have to build the housing, we have to improve on education. And that's not going to come just from inside. There is a role for those who are outside of the community. So that's one area where I also try and make clear. In terms of the steps that are taken by LISC and leaders like me, a huge part of what those organizations are doing though every day is like everyday work, like seeing people, engaging people, helping folks. Like, so you get caught up as a leader in a local community focused on what it is that you've got to do to support the people that you have within your mission to support. Part of my role at LISC is to be a little more bird's eye, right? So I get a chance to have a little bit more bird's eye to say, hey, here's some trends that we see coming in terms of opportunity. Here are some trends we see coming in terms of threat, which is sometimes much harder if you're in an organization to see that and do that. So we're able to do that. We're also then able to convene community leaders and community groups together. This plan is not LISC's plan, it's not Tunua's plan. It's a plan that a group of leaders have come together. And as a third party in some ways, it's not one of the organizations in the community. It is an entity that's saying, hey, let's all come together and figure out how we break down those silos to work collaboratively. So part of our role is to create that collaborative space. Another element is also, you know, about seeing if we can drive towards some common agenda and, you know, encouraging the group to find its common voice in that and facilitating that and creating the space for that and, you know, allowing for the level of disagreement that might be in terms of what should happen, but really focusing in on where's the consensus on what it is that we all believe that we should and could be doing together. And then finally, I would say another huge part of our role is identifying those resources. And so what you saw in that Brookings Institute, that article, and we did another one a little earlier this year, is sort of talking about that process. But then the next thing that communities need, which is what we're in right now, is we got to get some work done. We got to take some action. But in order to take action, there has to be dollars and money available to make that happen. And part of our role is to help go out and, you know, bring in that capital, bring in those grant dollars so that we can support that consensus built work of the community and provide folks with the funds that they need to make these activities happen in a reality in community. And so that's sort of the next phase, and that's where we are now. We've got a cohort of several 7 or 8 organizations who've received, you know, very substantial multi-year grants. And the goal is to see what can we accomplish on the things that we said we were going to do in our consensus plan as we move towards recovery out of the COVID-19 for South LA.
It sounds like all the multiple ways that you just iterated of bringing people together with an overview and interweaving them, taking them out of their silos. But sort of the intuitive thing I take away from what you're saying is you want to really, it's really about making the neighborhood and the community more itself. It's sort of, it ain't broke, don't fix it. It doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be funded and realized. So you know, kind of, it needs to keep magnetizing towards what it already is what I'm hearing. So they've already got all of these elements here. They're just sort of cut off from, you know, whatever, the water and the sunshine that would make it completely I'm stuck on the organic farming, obviously. So you bring it out of me. So this has been really great getting to talk to you. And I think we have some questions from some different members of the audience. We have Flora, Wong. What advice would you give to someone in their 20s to advance in their career? So perhaps Flora would like to have a career like yours.
Wow, Flora, that's great. So let's see. So what was I doing in my 20s? So I was the kind of young professional who I went to every event. So just like you're doing right now, Flora, I'd go to every single event that I knew about. And the goal was to meet not everybody, but at least, a couple of new people out of that event. The other element I would say is stay connected with your peers. It's really, really important. So some of the people who I have fantastic relationships with that I can call on now, who are in wonderful positions, are people who I really cultivated in my 20s as colleagues and friends, and we helped one another. There were plenty of times in my 20s where I wasn't looking for a job, but somebody might have sent me an opportunity, and I made sure that I passed that along to good friends and colleagues and people who I knew I could trust would do a good job with that opportunity. And you do that and people remember and they appreciate that. And it's a way to expand your network. And then I looked for opportunities to get connected with boards that possibly somebody in my 20s might not be involved in. And that way I could get that intergenerational perspective. So getting involved in organizations and in places where you can broaden your sphere of influence and set of friends. I'm still really busy now, but it's a little different because I've got a husband, I have kids. So I'm involved in different levels. I'm involved, let's say in Girl Scouts, for example, because of my daughter. So it's a different kind of network. But in your 20s, you go to every single thing you can. You get connected with as many people as you can. Definitely consider association. So I'm still a member of the Urban Land Institute today because that was something that I did in my 20s. So stay connected with those. Consider boards that you could potentially join just to learn some things and gain some new networks. And then, hold on tight to those peers of yours and see where people are going and help everybody achieve their goals because frankly, in the end, it'll put you in a great position yourself to be able to say, I know so-and-so and they're in this position right now. And whether they remember whether you help them or not get in that particular position, you can call on them when the time is right.
I think that's great advice for anyone's career, especially in their 20s. And Paul says, hi, Tunua. As the father of a young daughter, I'm wondering if you have advice for me on how I can influence my daughter so she might have your confidence, leadership ability, and motivation to help others. What can I do to inspire her to build a better world? Great question, Paul.
Yeah, great question. I mean, I feel like you've started with it. I'm still trying to figure that out for my own daughter. Although the thing is, whether I planned it or not, she is becoming that young woman. She's 14. She came home one day and I wonder, like, what does she think about mommy's, work and role? She's been a little girl who has hung on to my leg while I was at a podium, giving speeches to thousands of people. And she's like, well, I want to stand right next to you. Okay, sure. Stand right next to me. And one day she came home and she told me, oh, I've written my autobiography. I said, oh, wow, that's great. 13, you've written your autobiography. I said, tell me, what was in it? How did it go? So she, talks about her family life. And then she gets to the point in her story where she says, and I've decided, Mom, I'm going to be an Academy Award winning movie director. And I said, oh, wow, wow. And I was, excited for her and stunned all at the same time that somehow I could produce a little Black girl who has no idea that there has never been a Black woman to win that award. And yet she has the confidence and the idea that it is completely possible for her to do so. Of course, in that moment, being the mother that I am, I decided that I would hold all that to myself because I don't want to put any limitations on her. But a huge part of what I do for my children, a mentor has done for me, is that I constantly talk about what is possible. Mm-hmm. And whatever she comes up with, I said, oh, let's figure out how to do that. So that there isn't this sense of, I can't get it done. There are obstacles, be that as it may. There might be obstacles and there may not be an obvious path, but I tell her life is an adventure. And part of what we're doing is figuring out, what are we doing in that adventure to make sure that we get to where we want to be. And of course, having a kid who's focused on it, at least has some compassion for public service is something that's important to my husband and I. We constantly take her on activities to volunteer. She's involved in Girl Scouts so she can do service. And she sees us very involved in service. And so, you being an example and taking her around other women that she can see in service as well, I think will help with that activity.
That's great. So let's see. In this day with COVID, how does a person stand out when applying for a job? All right, this is Justine. We're getting a lot of career questions here. And I might add, this is a different one. So I'll wait on that one.
Yeah. Wait on that one, okay. So Justine, how do you stand out? Well, so I've done some interviewing with candidates for a position, for a couple of positions. I've had to hire during COVID. It is one of the most stressful things I feel like as a manager right now, because I've never done that and I'm trying to do a good job and it's very, very difficult. So what stood out for me in terms of candidates? There is definitely, you probably, Justine, you probably know the technology, right? So you're not the candidate who's getting on saying, oh my gosh, where's the unmute button? And I can't see myself, So that's a nice piece. To the extent that you can try your best to get on early so you can work out those kinks, that's great. I was very much interested in candidates who recognize that, yes, you are at home, but you're going to put your best face forward and come, to the conversation ready, at least, chest on up to present yourself. I know that might sound obvious, but I have recently done some interviews and folks, think that a t-shirt is okay. That's not going to work for the interview. And then one of the things that we were able to do in a couple of interviews is actually do second interviews. So, your goal is to do your very best in that first interview, because if there is a chance for a second interview, what I have found in the second interview is that our goal there is to try and get a sense of the person. And to use that as a time to be able to ask them to do more project-based interviews. So, here are a couple of scenarios and how might you respond in those scenarios. And, we try and get a sense as to how people present themselves online. So that's going to be really, really critical. Communication skills are going to be critical depending on the kind of position that it is. And so those are things that you want to just keep brushing up on and practicing with friends, trusted friends and colleagues who can do some online Zoom mock interviews with you.
Practice. Dry runs are always good. Another question, Grant Power asks, do you encourage women, especially women of color, to run for public office? And I'm sure you
Yes,
do.
yes, Grant, I do.
Surprise.
So first, let me give a shout out to a friend and colleague, Grant Power, who is somebody that I've worked with for a number of years, and really, I think, was connected to this wonderful group through his friendship and partnership and interest in asking me to participate. So yes, I think that there is a place for women in elected office. I think that there is a place for women of color in elected office. I'm really excited that it appears to me that from now till forevermore, we may, at the very least, have a woman a woman involved in one of the national tickets. I think that we're seeing that the expectation is that that's the very least that we should be doing. And I think over time, it's going to get to a point where there is also an understanding that we should have diverse candidates as well, that we have a chance to choose from. I bring a perspective as a mom, as a woman, as a Black woman, to any conversation. And when it comes to how do you make the best policy, there is no doubt that, statistics show that it requires that you've got a diverse set of people with diverse experiences and different ideas coming together to really create the best for the whole. And if we really want to be able to reach those who often are not reached positively by policy, we have to try and open up the opportunities towards policy positions for more people to try and have that kind of impact.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that's really exciting, actually, that we can begin to hopefully make decisions and policies together with a whole spectrum of experiences and points of view. I think that is obviously the way that people really thrive and come up with intelligent and imaginative solutions to life's challenges. So I think we are coming to the end of our wonderful time together. Thank you very much. And would you like to add any final thoughts before we hear from Frances, who's the Habitat president, I believe, director of resource development? Yeah. Would you like to share any sort of final little buttons on the talk?
I don't know that I have any final buttons per se. I mean, it's been a great conversation. Heather, you've been a great conversationalist, and thanks for all of your analogies and, bringing things in and helping even jog my memory about some ideas that I wanted to share today. So I appreciate that. I've been in your role, and I know how it can be sometimes. So it's great to have you on. I want to thank Habitat for having me and for inviting me to be part of the conversation in this series. I hope that you found, this interesting and compelling and hopefully, inspirational to women as they think about what women can do to build better. And then, just want to say to the audience, if there's anyone who wants to get connected, certainly feel free to visit us at lisc.org/Los Angeles to learn more about the work that we're doing there, all across LA County and across several other counties, including Ventura, Orange, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties. We'd love to be in contact and in connection. And I look forward to some of the folks that I've heard from on the in the Q&A. Sounds like we've got some careers for me to watch as well going forward in the future. So thanks for having me.
Wonderful. All right. Well, so I think we're going to hear from Frances Hardy, who is San Gabriel Valley Habitat's Director of Resource Development. And take it away, Frances.
Wonderful. Well, I think in the spirit of Women Build and Tunua, you climbing the ladder and you serving communities inside and outside of the LA area, I was flattered that
Heather gave me a promotion tonight. So President, I will take it maybe one day, but I'm really honored to be the Director of Resource Development here at San Gabriel Valley Habitat for Humanity. And Tunua and Heather, I wish we could hang out in this Zoom room all evening. You two probably have lots of things to get back to, but it was such a pleasure sitting here muted with my camera off and just soaking up the wisdom that both of you had to offer. And Tunua, I'm so inspired, and I'm not alone. I'm sure all the other attendees feel the same way. And I love that, you know, in your 5-point plan that you laid out, that you said that you know, communities that are developing, communities who have these amazing organizations and leaders can't do it alone. And that's so true. LISC LA has partnered with so many, and we love that you are helping people not do things alone. And we at Habitat feel the same way. We know that we can't do our work alone, and it's truly partnership that makes us successful. Something else that I wanted to highlight as I wrap us up and bring us home is action. You know, both Heather and Tunua are women of action, right? We heard great conversation that they engaged in tonight, but what makes them so remarkable are the actions that they have taken. And when we put word into action, that's when we can truly make a difference. So I want to invite each and every one of you tonight to take some actions alongside Tunua and alongside Heather. So the very first action I want you to take is an invitation. So Saturday, October 3rd will be our very first virtual Women Build. So as Brianna told us at the beginning of our time together tonight, Women Build is a movement that unites women from all backgrounds, all sectors, all ages, and everything else that might define us or make us different. Women Build brings us together and says that together we can unite, we can raise funds, and we can build a better San Gabriel Valley. And so we do that in partnership with women and their families who are in need of affordable housing. So this year, because of COVID, Women Build is a little different. Outside of COVID, we would be out on the construction site, banging our hammers, wearing our hard hats, loud and proud, like this woman is in the photo we have displayed. But instead, to keep everyone safe and healthy, we are uniting online. So you are welcome to pick up your hammer and even put on your hard hat and join us on October 3rd, but you are not going to want to miss it. We have so many incredible women we are highlighting. We are going to take several tours of various construction sites that women builders, through their funds and their networks, have helped us get started on. You'll even see some completed projects that we have been able to finish thanks to all of the Women Build fundraising this year. So that's the very first action. Please join us on Saturday, October 3rd. It is absolutely free to attend, and you can even organize a watch party with friends of yours. So women and their allies, we look forward to seeing you then. And then a few other things. Again, as I said, you know, I wish we could be in this room all evening with Tunua and Heather, but you learning about them and hearing from them doesn't have to stop here. So you can go to lisc.org/Los Angeles and learn all about the great work Tunua and her team are doing. And you can also go and listen to and watch the incredible series As the Globe Warms. I have actually listened to it myself. It is inspiring. So please go check it out, contact Heather, listen to her podcast, or watch the Zoom reenactment of that. And then finally, I want to invite you to consider making a donation. We are in the final stages of a matching campaign that's wrapping up on September 30th, and we are so close to really making that campaign a big success. And from now until the end of the month, your dollars count twice. So you can help families and individuals grow in resiliency. You can help them respond to and recover from the devastating economic impacts that COVID-19 has had. And you can do that all through just making a donation. So please consider doing that. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And please remember that together we really can make a difference. And again, big thanks to Tunua and Heather for leading the way on that. All right, wishing everyone all the best. Stay safe, healthy, and see you again soon. Bye-bye.